Hi, and we're live. Thank you for joining me today. I have to tell you, when you're going to do a live broadcast, anything and everything can go wrong. Let me show you. Some people have told me they can't hear me and the sound quality is not very good. So I bought this really great rodeo mic, okay, to plug into the iPad so we could get better sound. Fortunately, I did a test today before going live because it doesn't pick up any sound at all. So I'm going to have to figure that out later. So I hope that you can hear me. Hi, Marianne. It's me and you. Thanks for joining me. So I'm going to turn my camera around. I just got back from spending a wonderful weekend and an extra few days in California with Leslie Harrison, and I learned some things, and I'm going to share a few of those things with you today and do a little painting. But I'm going to turn my camera around and show you what I'm working on. I also like to, I'm doing a workshop this weekend, and I need to warm up. I like to paint something during the week before because it gets me ready for the workshop. Hi, Marianne. So I'm going to turn my camera around, okay? Hang on. Whoops. This is what I'm going to be painting this weekend. This is Pax and Zoe. And this is my completed painting that I did in preparation for the class. I'm very pleased with it. It's going to be a fun class, and hopefully it'll be a better class now that I've been out to visit with Leslie. I'm going to put this aside. And this is what I'm currently working on. This is going to be my warm-up picture. And one thing I learned by going to California with and being with Leslie is that it's time to revisit the basics. The basics are very important, and I can't stress them enough. One of those things is using light pressure on the base coats and on the top coats. You can see on my my wolf, I haven't finished his nose yet. I put some of this in yesterday, and I like the way it looks pretty good. So I'm going to finish his nose before going over to this area. This is something I learned this weekend about this golden color, and I'm going to share that with you. And if you have any questions, please, if you share them in the comments, I'll be glad to answer them. One thing I learned, so you should use very light pressure when you're applying your base coats. And with a wolf and any other kind of furry animal, it's okay if those base coats are kind of blotchy because you're going to cover them up with hair. And we want to make sure our pastel is really sharp. And we want to use the hardest pastel we can. One of the biggest things I learned this weekend was about this. This is a Conte 2B pastel stick or pastel crayon. This is much harder than the new pastel. So I'm going to use it for some of the initial layers. I'm going to sharpen it on my block. And I'm going to add them over in this area. Leslie cautioned me over and over again to go slow. Now, I know I promised before when I had to unexpectedly cancel my YouTube my Facebook Live that I would do pastel matte, and I will do that next week. But since I'm going to be teaching a velour this weekend, I wanted to warm up with a velour piece. So if I go, hi Lois, so if I go really take my time, this is another thing she told me, slow down when my pastel stick gets, hi Veronica, glad you could join us. When it gets dull, sharpen it up again. So before I even came home from California, I ordered a box full of these. So you can see it makes a nice, fine line. And then over the top of that, we can add some brighter whites with the new Pastel 211. Hi Lisa. One thing I learned as well was that I knew it, but I didn't know it, was to go from the hardest pastel you have to the softest. So if my 2B Conte crayon is my hardest, then the next hardest is going to be the new Pastel 211. So I can add some brighter hairs over the ones I just did. And if I needed a brighter, even brighter white, I could go to a Rembrandt. I think that's important in all pastel painting. You want to go from the harder ones to the softer ones and use your softer ones last. Now up in this area, I'm using a 277 Ivory. But just take your time and put in your hairs. I want to add some going in a different direction. I'm going to go back to the 2B. Take your time. Vary your stroke. 211. And don't rush. I think that's what I learned more than anything, is not to rush. Hello, Anita. How are you? Thanks for joining us. You want to make sure you get your base dark enough before you start. So you can see, I think this is going to be a lovely wolf. Add some black hairs. I'm not really sure where the edge of my border is going to be yet. Thank you, Veronica. I appreciate your kind comments. I don't know what time of day it is where you are. What I wanted to show you today was, I'm going to finish this part of the nose. You can see it's very dark. So I have my under layer here. And I wanted it to have kind of a bluish cast right in here. So I'm using some 305 New Pastel and putting that down. I also wanted to tell you guys, when I was in California, you may be aware that we did a Facebook Live from Leslie's studio on Sunday afternoon. And if you haven't seen that, go to her page, Leslie Harrison Art, and be sure to look at that video. It's a wonderful resource. So I want to make this, I think I'm going to make it kind of a light gray and then go darker. So I'm going to use a 249 new pastel, and I'm going to use it flat on the end and add some gray, because I don't want little hairs all over the muzzle. We've got all these beautiful hairs all over. We don't want them everywhere. So I'm going to put this down pretty evenly. And then I'm going to come back with my 211 and put in a few hairs. I loved being in California, and if you all ever have a chance to go out there and paint with Leslie, please do, or just go visit. So I'm going to put these little hairs in. If you have a dog, you know that you've got all these little hairs that all come together. On the front of the nose and up into the corners of the eye. Oh, thank you, Marianne. I love being with you in California. It was fun. Marianne's my good buddy. She lets me sit at her table. I'm going to use my white pencil. Draw in a few hairs. I don't care so much about these being very fine. So I'm going to let my pastel get dull. Now I'm going to sharpen it up some. Always keep your pastels sharp. Please send me a message or let me know if there's something else you would like to see me paint or something else you would like to see. So I'm going to just always follow the shape, direction of the hairs. I think one of my favorite subjects is a sleeping or resting wolf. You see, he's still got his eyes on you. Let me sharpen up my Conte pencil or Conte stick. Use my pencil. And I think I need to use my graphite pencil. Need some darker hairs down here, but I don't want to make them too dark. So rather than use a charcoal pencil, now down on the nose, let me get my black new pastel. I got pretty dark on this nose, and it really doesn't have any definition. So I want to add, I'm going to use my gray. And then there are a couple of little whisker places there. Okay, this is the paw that he's on top of, and I'll work on that later. What I really want to show you is this area here. I'm going to show you the reference. Here's my reference photo, and you can see how golden brown this is. And that's what I want to work on, because this is something I learned when I was in California. There is no color to match that golden brown, so I learned to use two different colors. One is this Rembrandt. It's a 4093, which is like a burnt sienna. And then the other color I'm going to use is this great new pastel 233 raw sienna, because there isn't really a perfect brown. New pastels, neither new pastels or Rembrandts, in my opinion, have very good browns. So here's what I learned. If I put this Rembrandt down first, it's kind of a gray brown, even though it's a burnt sienna, it's still pretty gray. And then let's put some right here on his leg. And you can see this is pretty gray. Then I'm going to add some base coat with this Rembrandt. And I don't know what it is. I think it's a 727-7. And then the tail is here. So what I learned was to let the harder colors push the softer colors in. So this is a new pastel. I'm going to add some color with that. But to make this brown a little brighter, I would have never thought to use this 233 because it's pretty strong yellow. But if I use the 233 over the Rembrandt, It makes a lovely golden brown. Isn't that pretty? And because it's harder, it pushes the Rembrandt in. I see some more color up here, some brown. I'm gonna add some in there. And don't do that, I made a mess. So what do we do when we have a mess like that? Well, let's see if we can blow it off. And fortunately, we can. Okay. Looks like I got some bad color on top of that. Let me rub that in a little bit. And I'm going to put some more of this gold on top of that. Now to add a little bit darker color, I'm going to use, this is 353, right in the shadow area. Even though this is a new pastel, it's still pretty. This is one of the softer ones, I think. You could probably use Mars Violet, 538, 3, so now let's work here. So I sharpened up my 276 buff. And just add the little hairs here. You know, the other thing I learned is if you can, it's important to paint every day. These hairs in here are a little bit lighter. So I'm going to switch to my 277 Ivory. Does anybody have any questions? I'm going to come down here, and the tail hairs are going to cover up this area. Now I do want the edge of the nose to be more prominent. So I'm going to take my 211. Thanks, Marianne. I love painting with you. Of course, I think I did more talking than painting. This time. So I like the way that looks. That's now when we go to doing this part of the leg, the hairs are just, you know, swirling around, so that's going to be more difficult. And we're also going to need to add snow. I'm going to sharpen up my 276 and my 277. Yeah, a piece of paper for my hands, some glassine. So this is the 277. I was going to put it on first, but I don't want to do that. I want to put it over these hairs. So they're starting to curl around. So I'm going to change direction. Now, up in this area, the fur starts to get real fluffy. So I'm letting the edge of my pastel get kind of dull so that it gives that fluffy area. Now I'm going to come back with the 277. Hello, Heidi. Thanks for joining us. Rotate my edge to make sure it stays. Hi, Lorraine. Welcome. So that it stays nice and sharp. I'm going to change color to 299 gray. Now I want to add in some black. This is a Create-A-Color black pastel stick. Being really random with this so that it I think this is 353 again. Some of these areas are not dark enough. I think when I go to frame this, I'm going to crop it in fairly close so that you get that tight look at the wolf. I don't like the angle of the nose here. It's not right, so I'm going to change it. I think in the future, I'm going to do one of those mixed media where it'll be a fluffy animal. I'm pretty sure it'll be a wolf, where we use watercolor paper and I do a base painting in watercolor and then watercolor pencils to add detail, and then final layers in Neocolor 2, soluble pastel, and then pastel pencil. I was very happy with those results. I think what I'm going to do is use a 140-pound cold press paper for that as well, which worked, I think will work very well. I want to add some light down here. This is just entirely too dark, so I'm going to put a little 276 about right down there. Now the tail is going to overlap the nose and part of the paw. The tail, of course, is the grandest part of it all. And I really like to get to that part because it's fun, but I'm going to do a little bit here. I'm going to darken it, and this is, I think this is 704.3. This is my most favorite dark gray color. I'll put some of that in, just very, very lightly. Light layers. Now I want to add more brown here. And some gold over that. A little bit darker. Let's see how this looks. Let's start with the Conti 2B white. Rotate the stick when it gets dull. Hi, Uncle John. What a pleasure to have you watching today. My white is kind of shattery, so I'm going to use a brand new white, 211. You're sweet, Uncle John. Thank you. God has been good to me. So we start putting in these, and as we get over to the brown, we're going to add, let's go back to our 276, buff, this will be a very time-consuming part of the wolf because there's so much hair in this part of his body. He's got his winter coat. $277. If you don't have one of these 277s, I used to use it just in portraits, but it's great in animals. Now let's say, for instance, this is too much the same and you want some darker color in there. So you can do that a couple of ways. You could use a brown pastel pencil. This is a Carbothello, and you could add some color in between the hairs. Or you could use the 9B graphite pencil. And go in between them and darken it that way. Also going to use my white charcoal pencil. Draw out some final hairs. And that puts the icing on the cake, so to speak. Let me darken this up just a little bit and show you how we're going to finish that off. Now I don't have a, let's see, I need put on the little boxes here, a darker brown. This one is Mars Violet. So when I finish and I get ready to add my final hairs on that, I'm going to use 353 276 and 277 yeah, probably my white. And you can add some very dark final hairs with your charcoal pencil. Because all of this from here on back is tail, so we'll take some time to finish that up. And I'm not going to keep you any longer today. Before I go, Lois wants to know the brand of pastel holder. I have two, Lois. I have one that's made by Intis. This is a number 8, and it will hold new pastels, but I really prefer the number 10. Of course, these are both 8s, but I do have a 10. Here we go, a 10. The 10 will hold a new pastel in a wrapper, and if your pastel is loose in it, you just wrap some paper towel around it to hold it. They come in sizes 8, 10, and 1, 2, 3, which will hold a Rembrandt. And they have a metal spring thing in it, and it just grabs the pastel. The other ones that I have are made by Lyra, but I've had less luck finding these lately, but the Intis ones you can get from Jerry's. And right now that's the only place I know of to get them from. Again, I want to thank you for joining me and show you one last time Pax and Zoe. This is the workshop we're having this weekend, and I just had a cancellation, so if you want to hop on a plane, Marianne, I'll save a seat for you. So you have a wonderful rest of the week. Please let me know what you would like to see me paint or demonstrate. Next time, I will do a pastel matte. Maybe we'll do a horse or something like that. And so until next time, thank you for walking. Thanks for walking, but thanks for watching. See you next time. Marianne, get on that plane. Bye-bye.